Okay. Well, here I am. I'm still in my sunroom, as you can tell if you're getting online now. It's a little chilly here. I had the space heater on earlier, but it's noisy, so I didn't want to have it running while streaming, and it's definitely colder now. There's no insulation out here, so like in the walls, so it loses its warmth very quickly. It also gets pretty warm in here in the summer, but that's all right. I wanted to sit out here mainly. I mean, it's nice, but it's got windows all around, so it's nice to look outside. But also, I'm trying to keep an eye on the squirrel feeder behind me. So if you happen to see a squirrel jump on that feeder, let me know. I'm trying to figure out how they're getting onto it. Like if they're getting onto it by jumping from the tree or from below. I put a baffle thing on top of it, so hopefully they can't climb down to it. But there has been a squirrel there all morning, and so I've been trying to catch it in the act of getting up there. I keep yelling at it and chasing it off, but I haven't actually seen how it gets on there. So let me know if you do see that. So we'll see. So it's the 11 o'clock stream. Looks like we got 10 viewers on, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of this new normal that we're figuring out. You know, it is starting to feel like a normal or feel like a rhythm, but it's still pretty weird. Just trying to figure out the best way to keep doing things. But this system seems to work. My plan for today is kind of like we did on Friday, where I'll show you some things and talk about some things here, and then we can have a chat about it in Slack. And then after after that chat is over, then I'll put up a version of these things in these questions and a link to the video in your Canvas discussion pages. So like for each of your digital culture groups, I'll give you all the same kinds of things that I'm going to talk us through in real time here. So the idea is that you can do either one of those. Like you can either join on the stream or participate later in Canvas. But I would really like for you to do one or the other, because this is a way to connect with the class and kind of stay on top of things and have a routine. Really, I think having a routine during this time of isolation is important. So this is hopefully a kind of routine that you can look forward to, I guess. I mean, I look forward to it. I have fun. So hopefully you can as well, or at least you can find it a useful way to spend a few minutes thinking about some things. So yeah, I'll take a few more minutes here for people to get online and get connected. If you have any issues, the audio looks okay to me, but if you have any issues with that, let me know. I'm trying a slightly different setup with the visuals here in Twitch. So I'm using OBS, the software, so I'm giving you specific windows from my computer, so it's a bit easier for me to manage and do other things at the same time. We had a little bit of a lag issue last period, so I'm going to last stream, so I'm going to do a few things here to hopefully maybe improve that. The trick is just like this computer is not. I mean, the computer I'm using is fine, but it's struggling a bit to do video. So I mean, it's good at displaying video, but like streaming the video and the stream of the video at the same time, that seems to be a little challenging for it. So that seems to have caused some lag. So hopefully it'll be better this time if I shut down a few unnecessary things and give it the best chance. So let me do that. No, I can't shut that down. Kill that. All right, so that might improve a little bit. Okay, well, all right, so let's get started then in terms of content. So last week we were looking at the history of, not history, but we were looking at the labor side of the construction of digital objects or electronic objects. And so we did that by learning about Mike Daisy's story and what he told to the This American Life podcast and show. And we looked at that from a couple of angles. First of all, we were interested in the claims he was making, and we wanted to try to understand what was actually going on there. He's claiming that there are certain abuses, that worker safety is not taken into account, that underage workers are working at Foxconn factories and other factories that supply Apple products. So his whole argument is that we should be worried about this. We should be changing our consumer behavior based on that kind of information. But as it turned out, he fabricated or embellished a lot of the details of his story. So we had a decision to make. Do we look at it as sort of on the balance an okay thing for him to do as far as like getting his story out there, or do we think that the lies and the other problems with his story invalidate everything else that he has to claim? And I think there's good reasons to believe both. There's good reasons to throw out the whole thing. There's also good reasons to believe part of it. But ultimately, it still is our responsibility to figure out what's actually the truth about our objects, the ones that we're researching, the ones that you're researching for your digital archaeology project. So it's still tricky. It's still a murky situation that we have to try to do our best to clarify. There's a similar kind of murkiness around the afterlife of devices. So this is something where we're thinking about the future of an object, and sometimes we have to basically speculate about that. Oh, sorry. I saw a disconnected cord, and I was hoping it wasn't my camera. So we're going to learn about the afterlife of devices, and we're going to look at a couple of different video pieces that are going to try to tell us some things about it. We'll look at one today, and it's just about 8 minutes long, so we'll look at it together right now. And then there's another longer piece that I'll send you a link to look at and talk about before Wednesday. So you'll watch that one on your own before Wednesday. So I'm going to try to stream this here, and this is a part that got a little laggy last time, so hopefully it's not too bad. But what I'll do is I'll post the link. I'll share the link in Slack, and so if you want to watch it on your own, you'll probably have a better time streaming it directly to your device as opposed to watching me stream it to you through Twitch. If you do that, just might want to mute my audio while you're doing that. Here's a link to the video we're about to watch in case you want to view it on your own. So about 8 minutes long, and I'm going to go ahead and start it now, and hopefully the lag won't be too bad. There are captions, and the audio, from what I heard anyway, the audio sounded okay when it came through. So this is a short little documentary film about a group called the Basel Action Network, and we're going to see some of their activity here and some of their information. So I'm going to hit play, and I will keep an eye on things.
So everybody, this is scenario 1. We're buying equipment. We look around, see what they have, and we start haggling over the price. So any questions?
No, sir.
I think it's right up here, about a quarter of a mile.
Jim Puckett is leading a team that's going undercover to find out what actually happens to electronics that are sent to U.S. recyclers.
Most of the public still thinks a recycler is a recycler, and that they're going to recycle it right there in America. They're really exporters, and they don't care what happens at the other end. Shows us 10 meters out.
Puckett is the founder of the Basel Action Network, a Seattle-based watchdog group that investigates the afterlife of electronics.
We're basically trying to stop the rich countries from dumping their hazardous waste on the poorer countries.
In this case, Hong Kong.
But they're running.
Running away?
To get inside, a local driver and translator posed as e-waste buyers.
老板，我们过来买货的。我就说是想要看一下那个电子器件的那些零部件嘛。
Okay, just a quick note I wanted to make. As you're watching this, keep an eye out for the types of things that are in your object, the one that you're researching for your project. Either you'll see maybe you'll see the exact thing you're working on, but probably not. But look for things like it or things that might have similar components in them in this video here. So, sorry, let me continue.
With people buying new computers and other electronics more frequently than ever, electronic waste is now the fastest growing waste stream in the world. On top of that, it contains toxic materials that can poison people and the environment. This investigation began months ago, when Puckett's team put GPS tracking devices inside 200 old computers, printers, and TVs. Then they drop them off at locations across the country, at recycling facilities, donation centers, and electronics take-back programs, including some of the industry's most reputable companies.
We sat back and said, where are they going to go? And the little devices went out and spoke to us, saying, this is where I am.
Puckett's group partnered with Carlo Roddi of the Sensible City Lab at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Tracking is really the first step in order to design a better system. One of the surprising things we discover is how far waste travels. You see these kind of global e-waste flows that actually almost cover the whole planet.
Each device traveled an average of about 2,500 miles, and around a third of the tracked computers were exported. Of those, most ended up here. Hong Kong is home to one of the world's busiest ports. Ships deliver more cargo than is possible to inspect. As a result, Hong Kong has a reputation for being a transit point for illegal trade and smuggling of all kinds.
Turn right onto Tin Fat Road.
Most of the exported tracked devices led Puckett to a little-known part of Hong Kong called the New Territories.
So it's really a frontier. It's really cowboy land out there.
Puckett followed one tracked printer here to a place that calls itself a farm.
Farmland? Yeah, that's a great farm in there. You would have no idea that there was a huge scrapyard there until you look over the fence.
Inside, they found printers being taken apart by immigrant workers.
I'm looking for asset tags to tell me where the material came from. I look for the environmental harm issues. I look for the workstations to see how those workers might be exposed.
Many of the workers handle hazardous material without protective gear. One concern? Printer toner, a probable carcinogen.
There's no protections of this labor force. There's no occupational laws that are going to protect them.
Jackson Lau is the head of the Hong Kong Recycling Association. He runs a licensed recycling facility in the New Territories, and he says the junkyards in the area that import e-waste are unlicensed and unregulated.
只不過停留喺一個分類拆解個過程，咁整個呢個處理過程咧，其實就唔係一個好完善嘅設備嘅，咁形成咗咧有啲冇價值嘅嘢咧會堆放咗喺香港裏邊咧。
老細。
Look at the tubes. Many tubes thrown on the ground here.
The white fluorescent tubes light up LCD screens. Each of them contains mercury, and even a tiny amount can be a neurotoxin.
Day in and day out, these workers are completely oblivious to this hazard, are smashing these. The tubes are breaking right in front of their faces, and mercury is very toxic.
你哋要戴口罩。
I asked him that if he knows the white tubes are dangerous. He has no idea.
The United States is the only developed nation that hasn't ratified an international treaty to stop first world countries from dumping e-waste on developing nations. Other developed nations set e-waste collection mandates and require electronics manufacturers to pay for domestic e-waste processing. Further, the United States has no federal laws requiring electronics to be recycled. Half of states allow electronics to be dumped in landfills. John Shigarian is the CEO of Electronics Recycling International, the largest e-waste recycling company in the United States.
It takes hundreds of employees in each facility to do the real work of electronic recycling.
He says that some recyclers are exporting to cut costs, because in the last 2 years, their biggest source of revenue has plummeted.
At the height of the market, when we would go to sell steel, plastic, aluminum, gold, silver, palladium, copper, we were getting 14 to 15 cents a pound more than we are today.
Dell Reconnect, an exciting program that makes getting rid of old technology easy. Dell was the first major computer manufacturer to ban the export of non-working electronics to developing countries. They partnered with Goodwill, allowing people to drop off old computers of any brand for free to be refurbished or recycled. The electronics are either dismantled on site or sent to Dell's recycling partners. Dell says that more than 400 million pounds of e-waste has been diverted from U.S. landfills because of their program. But the Basel Action Network and MIT's investigation concluded that tracking devices placed in old computers and dropped off at participating Goodwill locations ended up in Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, and Thailand. Beth Johnson manages Dell's program.
If there's something that did not follow the system, we would certainly want to know about it, and we would certainly take corrective action.
In a written statement, Goodwill Industries said it's committed to responsible recycling and encouraged its member organizations, which are autonomous, to review their contracts with Dell. Back in Hong Kong, Puckett finds more clues to the scale of the problem.
Laptop with an LCD screen ending up here in Hong Kong and new territories for the Los Angeles school system. Unbelievable.
Puckett finds electronics from U.S. police departments, jails, hospitals, and libraries.
Government is always trying to save taxpayers' money, so they are obliged in some cases to always do the cheapest thing.
For now, market forces are driving e-waste exports.
I'll get on the bank here.
Without a federal law banning the export of e-waste, there's little incentive for the industry to change.
Okay, so I posed the question in Slack, and I invite you now to respond to it. Oh, sorry, weird message in Slack there. But if you, did you notice anything in the video that looks familiar or looks like it could be something in your device, the device you're focusing on for this project? So it might be something, I mean, a lot of those objects were pretty big. I don't know if any of you were working on printers, but certainly those were there in that video. Laptops. I'm trying to think of other specific things I saw, but hopefully maybe you noticed something. So let me know. Post it in Slack. So what did you see? It's like several of you are typing, so I'll give you a minute to type. It's kind of chilly out here. My coffee is cold, so it just makes me colder to drink that. I haven't seen the squirrel for a minute. Yeah, so definitely plastic. Definitely plastic. Yeah. Those are, so Sophia, if you have a TV, yeah, it's not easily. So Emily, I think, I'm not sure, but I think that the LAUSD laptop may have been an old Mac. Yeah. Skeletons, that's a good term, Brian. Let's see, do we have a skeleton emoji? There you go. Yeah, Game Boys, anything with an LED or LCD screen is likely to have some pretty interesting chemicals in it. The older ones, I have not taken apart many of these myself, but the older style LCD screens definitely have those CFL tubes in them. But but newer ones are more likely to be backlit with LEDs. Yeah, Sarah, it's a lot of big stuff. So yeah, but each of these big things has some of the smaller components. You know, I mean that's how it breaks down. Like a Game Boy is basically the same kind of thing, but on a much smaller scale than like a TV or a laptop. Okay, so lots of different kinds of things that you all are working on, but almost everything, I think, a large percentage of the things that anyway that people are working on have screens of some sort. So that might be an avenue for research. As I typed here a minute ago, the older flat screens probably do have those white tubes in them. That's the backlight for the liquid crystal display. But newer ones are probably LED. It depends, and you can't tell sometimes until you take it apart. I've got one flat panel TV that I've taken apart in order to turn it into an arcade machine, and it is the older style. It has the CFL in it, the actual tube. So I've been careful not to destroy it, obviously, or break those. Okay, so all kinds of interesting things in it, and when we're interested in thinking about what happens to each of these objects, we kind of have to think of each of the individual elements and materials in it and what their future is, what their potential afterlife is. So thinking about your device, what materials in it are potentially valuable for recycling? So think about the things in the video that they were talking about. The one, what was his name? I wrote it down. Shigerian, I think, that guy, the CEO guy with the hard hat. He gave a list of some of the materials, and he was talking about the economics of it. But what were some of the materials that you remembered him mentioning that you might have in your device? Certainly plastic is going to be in almost everything. There are different kinds of plastic. Some of it's more recyclable than others. But what else do you have potentially? Yeah, steel. Yep. Copper, steel, aluminum. Definitely markets for those. I don't know if you've ever attempted to, or if you've done any recycling with metals like that, but I mean, there's different scrap metal places, like around Fredericksburg. Like if you bring them a pile of steel, they'll pay you for it. It turns out not to be a lot. Like if I had an old dryer, like a clothes dryer, that didn't work. The motor was burned out. I decided, I'll just recycle it because no one wants it. And so it's a lot of steel, and it's quite heavy. It was like 200 pounds. I think I got $7 for that, like in terms of the scrap value of that steel in that. So that was okay, I guess. Or no, I think I got $10. Come to think of it. Because they also had like an old a steel garage door, and I took that in and recycled it. And I'm pretty sure I got $7 for that steel. Yeah, so aluminum, copper, these are definitely valuable. Copper certainly. So how much copper? How much are these things worth? Like if we're looking at the amount, considering the very small amounts. Could we calculate a potential dollar value for your specific objects? Yeah, I mean, copper does have a market. I mean, you can certainly sell it. If you take copper to a scrap metal place, you can make quite a bit more than you can for steel. But you have to have real copper. So where do you get copper? Old pipes. Sometimes, if you take pipes out of a house, you might end up with a bunch of copper, right? Yeah. So this is a good thing to guess. So you've got to. I mean, that's a good guess. So I think we could probably find the actual marketplace, like try to understand what the actual commodity market is for this kind of stuff. There's a lot of information out there about these kinds of things because people invest in markets, and so it would be interesting to look at. Right, so even if it's very small, it's probably calculable, and that's probably that's interesting. Certainly it's only valuable in bulk, but understanding what your particular thing contributes to that bulk, that's what I guess I'm interested in. Yeah, okay. So that's an interesting point. Great point. I wonder how much, oh, other links. How much of that trade-in is in the actual recyclable, reclaimable materials. I think, I mean, I'm guessing, but I think, Emily, that the value potentially, as you say, $2470 for a new MacBook Pro trade-in, I think a lot of that's probably the fact that they expect to be able to resell that, like they expect to be able to fix it and resell it, or repurpose the parts to refurbish another one. I don't think you're gonna melt that down and get $2,470 worth of copper out of one laptop, for example. So this is interesting. This is a link from Ian. Let's look at how much actual copper, how much it actually goes for. Okay, so copper price today is $2 per pound. So how many pounds of copper are in your $2 a pound? That's pretty good. I got some pipes laying around. Maybe I should recycle that. But like if you're looking at maybe let's see, or it's 13 cents per ounce. Like, so do you have an entire ounce worth of copper in your calculator? Probably not. But you can actually weigh it and guess it. I just mentioned a calculator because I know several people are working on calculators. But you could actually weigh these things out and come up with an estimate. That would be pretty interesting to see as you think about it. Okay, so right now, I mean, the reason we're thinking about this kind of things is, especially if you're doing the archaeology project where you're thinking about the afterlife, we can imagine certain afterlives. So we can imagine that if the copper is extracted from your Game Boy, your laptop, whatever it is, that it might be recycled and melted down and recycled and sold and then repurposed into wires or other things in the future. That's kind of what we're thinking about here. And so understanding the cost of that or the potential value for that helps us understand the market part of that. I thought there was an interesting point near the end of that about this a bit, the video, by the way, where it talks about the market, like that the market currently isn't solving the problem. And so I think they're implying that we need federal regulation to imply federal regulation to solve some of these problems that the market is unwilling to solve, partly because the margins are so low. So interesting things to think about as far as kind of what to do about it next. Oh, great. Okay, so $40 million worth of gold from recycled iPhones? That is crazy. Wow. I'm going to add an emoji reaction to that. What is the right? Astonished. That's a lot. I had no idea it was that high. That's a lot. So how much of that is in your iPhone, iPad, Mac, or whatever? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to kind of see how much, like if it's 2,204 pounds of gold, right? How many pounds of gold or how many ounces are in your thing specifically? That's probably not much, but you could probably figure these things out. That article may have some more leads to kind of follow up on that. So again, this is really if you're thinking about if you would want to follow those leads if you're trying to think about the future of your object that you're studying for this project. But I think it's probably just worthwhile to look at anyway. Okay, so this is some of the values, right? Very small values potentially, but very valuable individually materials like gold. Plastic has a market value. The market for recycling plastic is not great. So like you're not likely to get much value out of a MacBook's worth of plastic. Or a calculator's worth of plastic, but there is a market for it. Like it does go into a big pile. You can put it out by the curb and it'll get picked up and taken somewhere for recycling. But that somewhere, that's what we're trying to understand and think about more. So if I were to talk about a device right now and the future of a calculator, if I just threw the calculator in my recycling, Today was recycling pickup day, so what happens from here? Like, where does that truck take it? Who sorts it out? What do they do with the plastic? That's the kind of thing I would try to find out. And I can actually, I mean, this is I'm in Stafford County. We use county recycling, and so I could find out. I mean, they have a pretty good website actually, and you can go to the landfill and probably talk to people. I've talked to people before; they're pretty friendly. Anyway, so those are things to think about. But the other thing that we're interested in is how the pressures of this market and the low overhead especially leads to a lot of waste and then a lot of illegal operations like the one we saw in the new territories in Hong Kong. So shifting gears a bit, what are some of the dangerous materials in your device? So think about some of the things that potentially cause harm. Of course, they mentioned mercury. If you have anything with those fluorescent tubes in it, those probably have mercury in it, and mercury, of course, is toxic. So is there anything else? Like, is there anything else you can think of or that you heard them mention in the video that you know about that is toxic and that could be in your device? Yeah, let a few of you start typing some things. I guess toxic or dangerous. I mean, there's different kinds of danger, I suppose. I mean, toxic would be something that if you ingest it or breathe it in. Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. Always be careful whenever you take things apart. Yeah, maybe. Siobhan, how do you know? I mean, I don't. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I don't know. I don't know I don't know what lead would be used for in an electronic thing. Yeah, definitely. Too many autocompletes here. Yeah, definitely. Lots of danger. Yeah, so that's. I mean, again, I'm sure you're right, Siobhan. I'm just kind of. I'm curious what it's used for. I don't actually know. Certainly, if there's a liquid battery, any kind of liquid, dry wet cell battery, that could definitely have chemicals in it. This is a pull quote. Beryllium. Okay, yeah. Oops. So this is Ian. What are you quoting from there, Ian? That looks interesting. Because that's the kind of thing that definitely, yeah, you're mentioning certainly the circuit board, the PVC, phthalates. These are all chemicals that can be, I believe phthalates are potentially toxic. Yeah. Oh right, sure. Yeah, benzene and then hexane, which we heard Mike Daisy talked about. Yeah, definitely. Those were things that Mike Daisy was talking about. If I remember correctly, I think the N-hexane was used in the manufacturing process, so its risk was more to the people that were using that chemical, and not necessarily in terms of it surviving into the consumer, but certainly one of those chemicals that could be a problem. Yeah, definitely. Okay, great. So game consoles, yeah, they certainly should. Although I'm thinking about these specific ones here. Like PVC is like literally everywhere in our houses. Like so, PVC as a kind of plastic is like inescapable. Like you can't do anything about it. The risk might be if it melts or if you like inhale the vapor from it, which is a risk in electronics. If things overheat, then they give off that smell. There's a certain smell of like burning electronic stuff that you may recognize. That's probably PVC that you're smelling, and that's bad. But unless you're smelling that, it's probably okay. let's see. Yeah, Jessica. So as you mentioned, the LED tubes. If you have those, a lot of TVs don't have the tubes anymore. But if you do have those, then yeah, that would certainly be a risk if you're taking those things apart. Okay, so this is of course good advice just to keep in mind if you're taking things apart. Like these are real harmful things potentially. So wear gloves if you have them. If you are taking something apart, you don't have to take something apart again for this assignment, but if you do choose to certainly be careful. Wear gloves. Work in a well ventilated area. Yeah, that should be fine. As long as you're not doing this every day, like all day, every day, the risks are pretty small, I think. But it's something. It's always good to be, to use common sense. Great. So looks like Siobhan's typing. I'll let you finish your thought. Then I had another set of questions. Yeah, I'll go ahead and type my next question. So we know about some potential danger, some potential value. What else do you? Oh, here's a long thing. Your device in order to predict its future life. So, okay, so lead. Okay, interesting. So, I'm gonna have to reply in a thread here. So, lead is used in PVC. Maybe. I know that solder can use lead, but most of it doesn't now. So like solder is the little silvery drops that you'll see on a circuit board, and if you do soldering, like if you get it yourself, I have heard that lead-based solder, which is what the classical stuff is, that I've heard that that's a lot easier to work with, and I have used solder and I find it very difficult. Maybe I'm just bad at it, but I've attempted to do it myself and I find it very hard to work with solder that I've purchased, but it's lead-free solder, and so apparently I think lead has a lower melting point than the stuff that I'm using, and so that's part of what makes it hard. Yeah, that's a good point, Sophia. Like it could be, yeah. Yeah, that's oops. Yeah, that's a good point, and you can find out about that on places like eBay. So if you find your object on eBay, that gives you a good sense that there's a market for it, and you can see what it is, and you can look at it over time and see how it changes. Yeah, interesting point too, Diego. That what purposes might it be used for in the future? So like the lead, if you have a circuit board full of lead solder, that's not really that useful because people aren't using lead for solder anymore. So that's a good point that evolving thing changes. Yeah, there's certainly a value to certain types of old things. What about the time to biodegrade? So do these things biodegrade? Do they break down in any way? How long if you put it in a landfill, how long is it going to be that thing? And at what point would it become just the elements? Like what is the biodegrading process for your thing? That's another thing to think about. Certain plastics do break down, but the kind that circuit boards are made from is meant to be very, very durable. So usually circuit boards are plastic, but it's layers. So you'll have a plastic layer, and then you'll have like an epoxy layer, and then like a resin layer, and then a Teflon coating somewhere in there. So all those things are very, very tough. And so they're not going to break down on their own for a very, very long time. They're also usually flame retardant. So like they're meant to survive under high heat. So, there's something that could be there for millions of years, actually. Could be recognizable as a circuit board for millions of years. Okay, great. So that's the kind of thing I was looking for. Let's see what this one is. Don't need that link anymore. So great. So this is a good breakdown of several things and the kinds of things that you may have in this. This is talking about aluminum cans, but it's aluminum, which is the element, and so there is probably a similar breakdown expectation for aluminum if it's built into your, like if it's a laptop case, it's probably similar. Glass is very recyclable, but it doesn't actually break down on its own at all. So it might break into small pieces, or like if you've seen beach glass where it's all smooth, certainly parts of it have worn away, but those glass atoms or particles have just become much, much smaller, and they've just become part of the ocean. So really, it's hard to say if you would consider that breaking down, but a piece of glass, unless it's subjected to a lot of specific stress, like being in the ocean, is not likely to break down for a very, very long time, like millions of years. So, oh great. So, Jessica just shared a link to Nintendo. Do they have their own recycling? Oh, great. Okay, looks like they do have their own take back program too. So that's very nice. Great. So this is, if you're thinking about the afterlife of your device, this could be a way to imagine that. Like maybe it's a device that you send to one of these take back programs, and then you could tell a story about who gets it next and kind of where it gets refurbished. Thinking about specificity is always what really makes these projects stand out. So if you can imagine if you can find out like where is their take back program and what do they actually do there and how long does it take, and then what do they do with those objects, that would be a great story to tell. I mean, you'd be speculating, but that's the kind of thing that I think that version of this project could really do well. So yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, so one last set of questions, or not even set of questions, really just one more question to shift gears again. Like with Mike Daisy in the podcast, we looked at how the audio told the story and how the editing kind of made you feel certain ways about Mike Daisy as you were listening. So I'm interested in the medium here as well. Like this is a documentary film, a short documentary film. So shifting gears. I don't need to. I feel like I tend to start sentences with the word "so," and I'm trying not to do that. Shifting gears a bit. How does this video use rhetorical strategies, visual, audio, etc., to make its ideas seem compelling, reliable, or authoritative? Kind of a multi-part question. You could take different pieces of that if you'd like. But basically, we watched this documentary film. So, like, how is it edited? How is it filmed? How is it arranged to, like, basically, why should we believe it based on the things that it's doing, the things that it does within itself to make itself seem credible? How does it make itself seem credible? Sometimes it takes me a while to get to the simpler version of a question. How does it make itself seem credible? Yeah. All right, several people are typing. This will be the final question, and we'll wrap it up after this. So we've been going about 45 minutes. Several people typing, so I'll let you type your thoughts. Still haven't seen the squirrel for a while. Chilly. Yeah, so the man in the video, what was his name? This guy. This guy. I can't think, what was his name?
The exporters. And they're in America.
I mean, the narrator tells you, but he's the head guy from the Basel Action Network. Yeah. Okay. Whoa. Lots of comments. Right. Yeah. So they show their work. That's a good point, Sarah. Right. They show their work. So we get to see it in action. And Diego. Definitely the person talking to a camera setup seems familiar from journalism. And likewise, the blurring of faces. Because I mean, these are real people, so it's essentially giving us a first-hand view of this facility, and in giving us that first-hand view, they respect the privacy of the people there, and so that's the kind of thing you do as an ethical journalist, which is what they're essentially what they're doing here. They're demonstrating that. So yeah, good point. Right, and so in several cases, they showed their work, and so lots of first-hand evidence, and they directly ask people to explain what they're doing. So they give people a chance. Like they give the one the head of the recycling place in Hong Kong. They give him a chance to explain what he's doing and why he thinks it's okay, or how he actually is talking about other places. So if they want to know something, they interview someone, and that's something that a journalist should do. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good. Right. So they had lots of good evidence, and so these are good ways that we can feel pretty confident in the credibility of the source. There's a lot of good evidence, lots of attempts to show the credibility of that evidence, the accuracy of that. They've given us, I think, a good reason to believe that this is the best evidence for what they're trying to get us to understand. So I think these are all good. I think there's other things we could talk about more subtly, like just the way that the people's names often appear in lower third graphics or in titles. They're identified and then given their real names. So if we wanted to follow up on is that the right person, we could go and do that research ourselves to verify this. We could also learn more about the Basel Action Network. Basically, they do a lot to show their work here, and that's what I think makes it really compelling and pretty straightforward, really. So let's see. I'm about to wrap it up. I think I want to make sure I have time for lunch before my next class. So if you have any other thoughts, then or questions, make sure you get and you want me to answer them on the stream, then go ahead and put them in here. The other thing I was going to say is for Wednesday, I'm going to give you a link to another video to watch that is talking about what's going on. And it's going to use different ways to appeal to us, and I want to pay attention to those differences, and it gets some of the same ideas across, but through a different set of rhetorical appeals, and so I want to try to understand that. The other thing I want to mention is Friday. Instead of doing a stream on Friday, I think I'm just going to do open office hours, and what I'll do is just be online, and if you want to drop in and ask me a question, you can, and if not, if you'd rather just work on your own, you're welcome to do that. So but I'll do another stream on Wednesday, and then we'll see. I might do a very brief stream on Friday, maybe, or something like that. But I think the main purpose will be to leave you all a chance to check with me and chat about your individual projects. Let me just type this in here. In case you have any final questions or comments. Otherwise, keep working on your digital archaeology projects. Some people asked about the due date. It is still Friday, but if you need more time, that's fine. It's not really due in the sense of it's late if it's after Friday. You know what I mean? I have to have a date on it for Canvas, so that's the date. I think you should do this one before you move on to the next project on digital methodologies. But I'm not too worried about lateness at all, other than I need to have everything in by, I think May 1st is the date that I specified in Canvas. So that's the only due date that really is pretty significant, because I have to actually finalize your grade at that point. So I need to know what you've done. All right, so it looks like Siobhan might be typing a question, so I'll let those come through and then try to wrap things up so I can have lunch and warm up. This part of my house has gotten a lot colder over the last few minutes. It's been pretty chilly out here. I haven't seen that squirrel for a while. Okay, so Siobhan, you're talking about timeline.js. And Mayek, yes, you can redo. I'll answer these here too. Yes, you can do those after the fact. And Siobhan, so the images need to be, if you're talking about timeline.js, timeline.js, images do need to be hosted somewhere else first, and then you then you drop in the URL to that hosted location in the spreadsheet. So in other words, you put it online and then get a fully justified URL that starts in HTTP and ends in JPEG, and that's what you give to Timeline. So lots of ways you can get something online. You can post those on your domain, or I like to use Imgur.com. There's other things like it too, I think, but Imgur is just an easy way to just drop something online and then get a URL. That's all you need, as long as it ends in .jpeg. The thing with Imgur that you notice is like when you put it online, it gives you an album link, which will show you that image inside of the Imgur website, and then the what was I gonna say? But you have to click on it and then click on it again, and then right-click to open in a new tab to get to the actual JPEG. So, Siobhan, I'm not sure what you mean. I'd ideally take a picture of your iPhone. I mean, because this is about you're telling a story about your iPhone, so take a picture of it, right? That's what I mean. And you're right that Google can be misleading. So if you find an image on a Google image search, that may not be available for you to use, and it also might not work inside of Timeline.js. So you can use that to find an image, but you have to do it the right way. So maybe I can show you that real quick. So if you go to images.google.com, you'll see that, let's see, iPhone 5. So like here's one, right? This is on theverge.com though, and so this is their image of it. If you click on this, so this is like a preview of the image. Let's say you wanted to use this one, which I don't really recommend. I'd recommend using your own. But you might be tempted to go like right-click, open image, and new tab, and then see if this works. So this might work. You notice that this is a fully justified link. It says HTTPS, and it ends in JPEG, so that's good. Although this says it's an iOS 7. No, it is iPhone 5. So this may work. Like if you just copy and paste this into your Timeline.js cell, maybe that'll work. It may not though, because of this, where it comes from a CDN, from a Vox CDN, and those are content delivery networks, and they sometimes will block other ways of accessing an image if you because what you're doing is essentially what's called hot linking, and there might be measures in place that prevent hot linking. So that may or may not work. Ideally, take your own picture and upload it somewhere that you know that you can rely on, like Imgur. So So Google Images as a last resort, maybe, but specificity to your actual iPhone 5 is important. So try that first, right? And this is maybe something that we could talk through a bit more on a one-on-one conversation, because I can kind of see where you are and then help guide you. You can also, and this is true for anyone that might still be watching, you can always, with the spreadsheet, the Timeline.js spreadsheet, if you can share that with me, like give me edit access, I can actually see what your spreadsheet looks like and help troubleshoot it. So you can do that if you want to. If you want me to look at or troubleshoot a timeline JS spreadsheet, give me edit access to the email address Zach. And that's true for everybody, of course. Okay, so I've gone on long enough. I'm going to wrap it up here. And like I said, we'll have another conversation and some activities on Wednesday. And then we'll, on Friday, it'll be more of an open office hours session. So thanks for watching. Thanks for chatting. Those of you who could join me, and everyone else, hopefully you'll be able to join in on campus. So yeah, I guess that's it. Have a good afternoon, and maybe get outside, take a walk. I'm going to try to after I warm up a little bit. So all right, see you later.